Hello, War of the Visions fans. I'm Jackie Fox, and today we're going to be talking about Shurecca, as I recently got her to 140. Let's take a look at stats first, but also, I just want to acknowledge that this girl has some pretty ridiculous accuracy. In this build, her accuracy is at 112, and she has really high status resistances as well, up to 75% to curse with runes. For this build, 75 resistance to paralysis and curse, 50% to silence, poison, petrify, confusion, sleep, and an additional 25 to disable and berserk with the marshmallow hat. This is also supplemented by Dario's auras, 50% to poison and sleep, now with 100% total, and new to the build, 50% resistance to slow. Especially wielding the Dragon's Whisper, I tend to think of Veritas of the Heavens as a fairly accurate at 79 accuracy, but he's actually a little bit below Dario with some aim gear at 81 in this build. Both units do a good job of backing up their accuracy with powerful or at least impactful guaranteed hits. Dario's in particular chaining and healing and topping off his spirit and hate as well for those matchups that push the boundaries of what Shurecca can hit comfortably and reliably. Especially with her 7500 physical HP barrier, she can easily handle physical damage well, at least at first, and Dario's 40% magic damage down aura helps balance her out, which is also very true of Veritas of the Heavens, aka Sid. She's also perhaps better at a distance, and at 140 has solid AoE resistance at 45, so a lot of ranged attack styles will struggle with her. Dario 15k and Sid 14k HP both clock in with very high, almost tank-like HP in Sid's case, making them both good examples of well-fortified frontline units. And in Sid's case, this is actually going to excel past Dario once he gets the Guardian's Crystal. Either can equip heavy armor, so the Maximilian fits nicely to blunt opening attacks, especially better for Dario, who can heal himself better, while the glinting armor, which is probably better for Sid, does a lot to add rushiness to the team. And the team, at least the build that I'm using, is very fast, so this rushiness can be really powerful for them. All three do especially well into Slash and Magic because of the Golden Armon and Dark Rama VCs. Knowing only this about her, and her being a wind unit, we can say a few things about her matchups. 1. She beats Ashen Mont as you might expect, sometimes defeating him so quickly that his threshold heal doesn't have time to trigger. Her physical HP barrier can negate his follow-up hits. If the initial attack doesn't deal damage itself, no follow-up hit will even proc. And this can even cause multi-target attacks to ignore her because they see 0 damage on her in the damage check, and the AI doesn't even try in some cases. Rarely they will only choose one target because of this, even if she's in range, wasting half of their attack on what amounts to be a pretty good bluff. She also has natural reaction block to deal with Mont's sleep counter, and also gets to 100 sleep resistance in build with Dario's aura. Also, she can resist his silent shenanigans pretty well, too, natively. And he's one of the Earth units that stands up to her best. This team, if not Shurecca herself, counters a variety of evasion builds well, and this is a strong selling point for the best Earth teams. Accurate magic has always been the crux of Earth, and she's a really strong anti-Earth character for this reason. Her curse resist is also pretty unique, and is especially helpful for a self-healing mage. This gives her better matchups into most of the best fire teams, and this will also extend into new lightning units like Ramada, and to a lesser degree it should also help against Veritas of the Frost, who will still be a threat to her and win generally into the future. She also deals with Soul and Setia pretty well for fire, although Volke's unit resist aura could be tough for her. Fire could also have a number of valid evasion units that could make them fun targets for her with a properly supportive team. This puts her in the intersection of the current AP auto-restore meta brought by Ashen Mont and One-Wing Sephiroth, meaning that she works well on teams using Blade Stream, which is worth even reconfiguring your armors for. This is a great TMR versus physical teams, and one that can be especially more magically focused tank like Dario and help him deal with physical matchups a little bit better. Even without this TMR, she can still answer both of these units quite well through follow-up damage alone in some cases, removing AP auto restore, haste, both conditions being important to both characters, re-raise via her skill, and courage via follow-up damage. There are still units that are scary for her, though. She's not unstoppable. Gilgamesh the Scourgebreaker being the biggest and most obvious check to her raw power. He's likely to one-shot her even under Dario's protection. On more magically focused teams, she can have issues avoiding his Seeking Plume in the way that she can on more physically oriented teams, especially when he's paired with someone like Ashamon. There's also magic and anti-magic units that will do better into her, like Helena the Black Rose, Strategist Aldoa, or Cloud, Springjume, Daria the Crystalborn, and hell, even Frevia may have a shot here. It will take a little bit of both to properly tame her on a team, but it's certainly possible as she's a modern glass cannon type character. High wind resist, ice VCs, tetrasulfate, etc. could seriously limit her kit and what is possible for her to do, but she does have a pretty good main job non-elemental attack. Still, limiting her to only this attack is a victory of its own. Dario and Veritas the Heavens also both have strong multi-target chaining, often the ability to build chains on several targets at once, allowing Shurecca, whose chaining is super limited, to be able to get higher levels of damage against injured units. This allows her auto-engage to consistently function as a courage re-raise negation mechanic instead of just bonus damage. Unfortunately, Shurecca is not durable for very long, another thing that helps keep her in her backer status. But without native courage or re-raise, she is vulnerable to being overwhelmed as a unit like Cypher can be. So supports that can provide her this stop loss is important to getting her safely closer to the fray. And it also helps that a number of the units that have these capabilities also have the buff lengthening aspects that can help with Blade Stream as well. Another interesting way to go with her is to use different mechanics to lower her hate, especially because with this team, she's the last unit you want anyone actively or even passively targeting. Without that, you'll want her in the back, and here she can help a bit, rarely to be honest, with healing through her main sub. Keeping her back can be hard, and you'll want to emphasize agility across the team in general, just so that the other units are able to keep up and keep ahead of her. With a full set of agility VCs and Blade Soul lore as a passive, she clocks in at 120 agility for me. So with a fast enough team, she's a unit fully capable of lapping slower teams, especially if she lands slow from Double Dreer in her main sub. Veritas of the Heavens is similarly fast at 116 agility and will likely haste himself to get out in front of her naturally, although one of the maps that I'm testing this on, haste isn't an option, so he can't do that. You can also help her wombo combo anyone unlucky enough to enter her range with higher than normal chances to immobilize, can lock units out of the game in some cases. This is especially true if they're also berserked, because now they can only use basic attacks, but they can't even move to get in range to execute them. And that's most of my thoughts on Shurecca in general, but I'm going to show you her on a number of other teams, and we're going to do some other things. Most of that is going to take place in the next video, so for the rest of this video, I'm going to focus in a little bit more on more matchups and more opponents for this particular team. So we're mainly going to be seeing the wind matchup. Although I do want to show off some of the teams that are using her at level 99 right now that are still incredibly powerful, one of which being this Black Mage Synergy team, which is really propped up by some strong Black Mage Vision cards, which honestly this team doesn't even have the best of, but they are still quite powerful. And I'm showing this particular matchup for them because I hear a lot of people talking about how Cloud and Jume have done really, really well into the all-magic meta that's been building. But I feel like there's a lot of things about this particular team that can counter that pretty effectively, so just watch. In the meantime, since this is the middle of the video, I want to remind you to like and subscribe. That's the free-to-play option for YouTube. Also, hit the bell because I'm a little bit foul-mouthed, and YouTube likes to demonetize my videos. So to make sure that you see the newest uploads, be sure to click that bell. But also, leave a comment, engage with other people in the comments, do that kind of thing. That really helps out the channel as well. And while you're on the way down to the comment section, there's a Linktree link that will show you to all of the parts of the Jackie Fox Media empire, including places where I just talk about the world in general, podcasts, books that you can purchase. Best way to support the channel, in my opinion, especially if you like fantasy storytelling. But also, you can donate to the channel as well and give me some more money for pulls if you want to see me run around with a few extra characters and maybe build them up a little bit faster. Though I was lucky enough to see Shurecca coming and think she's a great unit, so I held out for her and managed to pull 2 different copies, although I had to go to full pity for both of them. So this has left my accounts looking pretty bad. If you want to send some money to help with pulls, that would be much appreciated, and a good way to show appreciation for the channel and the time I make putting out this content and putting it together like this, because this one especially was a real beast to edit. You're going to find 3 different maps, I want to say 4 different teams, so this is going to be a pretty diverse amount of information here. This is another one of the teams that I've seen fairly commonly. It's really just kind of running off of the Black Mage and Katana synergy. It's going really heavy on Katana though, and there are some cards that benefit both fire and wind respectively. There is a KSVC for these units, so that can work pretty well. I really wish that this were a more fire-centric team that maybe use Shurecca up front to bait in ice units and then take them down, but I don't really have this set up for that. I mean, I absolutely could. One of the things that I could do, I think I have Shalza for this account, so Shalza might be an interesting way to go instead of Dario to add courage into Shurecca. Another thing that I want to try out is basically taking the bare bones of my 3 Veritas team and replacing Veritas of the Winds with Shurecca and replacing Veritas of the Earth with Ashen Mont, just to have a high follow-up damage team that also has the potential for some re-raise and adding re-raise to Shurecca. Although, you know, I can't say I'm particularly mad at Veritas of the Waters adding re-raise to Ashen Mont either. Either one of them is a pretty perfect candidate for getting an extra bit of re-raise. But as you can see, this team also does pretty well and has a lot of ways to be very accurate. I'm not really sure that at this point Sir O is the most evasive unit, but it is good to see that Shurecca can hit him after his big evasion buff without any real concern. Another thing I want to show you, though, is how Shurecca performs in a more cost-limited team. So right now we're having limited guild battle, and the team I'm running for that, since we have a 250 cost limit, is I just swapped out Dario the Crystalborn for MR Dario, who is pretty competent in, like, Crystalborn Dario is definitely a really big upgrade, but Dario as a tank, as a damage dealer, as a guaranteed hit unit, as a unit that has a lot of ways to generate hate and also do status effects, he is a powered down version of his other form, and at half the cost, he's actually quite the steal. He's not going to hold up quite as well, but hey, they have to use a cost limit too, so we'll see how that goes. Interestingly enough, this is my this is my light team that I play. I'm running, for my discount, actually this is 270 cost limited, so Dario is a 60 cost unit. My bad. So he's a little bit more than half the cost. But Engelbert here, losing his courage to the follow-up damage, is a pretty solid 70 cost unit for light teams. Although there are definitely other options. Sweetheart Miranda might be cool, but I thought having a tank on the team would be nice. And maybe I won't even run light for this, but you know, this team is doing alright, and it did manage to survive this interaction, although just barely. Leaving Dario here for last, because he tanked her damage and the rest of the team's damage pretty well, despite being an MR unit. Also, another little low-key advantage to this version of Dario is that he can equip the Blood Sword, and he already has some draining skills, so while he doesn't have the same ways that Dario has to quickly restore his health, he can get his health back pretty quickly himself if he does decent damage. And the version that I was running in that party has about 1300 attack magic, so while he's not nearly as powerful as Dario the Crystalborn, and doesn't have nearly the same skills, he can heal himself and he can slap decently hard for an MR tank. I mean, I would say that's actually really hard for an MR tank, actually. But also, another great way to learn about a team and learn about a new unit is to try to use them in manual, because this will force you to memorize A, their skills, but B, it'll force you to kind of learn a placement. And once you learn where you want your units to go, you can figure out how to get the AI to take them there. And if you can get them in the right place at the right time, then you can start building buff combos that can be really, really powerful that the AI, the automatic AI, will still be able to execute. I think for high level play, like figuring out how to get the AI to do what you want on a team is a big deal. And for me, this team is really leaving its Helena behind. Like, she needs to be further up or have other units rushing to buff her, because as you can see, the way I have mine set up, we're getting a lot of our buffs off and we're buffing multiple units at a time pretty effectively while also staying in a close formation. And there's going to be a reason for this that you're about to see, because I want to hang back for maximum benefit from glinting armor, which is about to happen. So this is going to give me a big CT boost, and like I said, this team is very fast and already kind of rushy, so we're going to allow them to kind of take off. Now, we didn't quite get enough CT to jump past and lap the other team, but we're going to be close. We're going to have a bit of a heads up on them, and that's okay. And one of the reasons I didn't move Dario forward is I didn't want to put too many people in range for damage, because I knew that even with that CT, they were still coming for me. But right now I have them where I want them, and I can unleash my damage. A big thing for timing when you rush forward in manual can be, you want to be the person who shows up second in some cases, because you want to be able to be there to deal damage, not to show up before you're in range. The last people to not be in range are going to lose, essentially, in most cases, or at least they're going to have some of the biggest uphill battles, because they're going to be fighting from their back foot from the very beginning. And with glinting armor and with holding a couple of my units back, I've managed to put them in this situation to where before they even get to respond or to attack me, I've already taken out 2 of their forward units, and probably could have taken out 3 if Helena had kept up. Although if Helena had kept up, maybe they would have done a little bit better and not been in this situation. But, you know, despite the fact that this team definitely would have done better if she had kept up, I guess it is kind of an advantage in a bad way. You know what I mean? That she's back there. Because if she hadn't been, she would have got wiped. But also, this strategy being a good idea is dependent on her team getting wiped, and that's just not a good thing to count on. I wouldn't say it's a good strategy, but here we are. So I'm going to use Veritas to start the chain on her, and then hopefully we can follow that up with Shurecca for big damage. Pretty good, pretty good. It's a good thing she didn't get off Reflect, because that can be a big problem for Shurecca that I pointed out earlier. And, you know, really kind of your turn order and stuff can depend on that. And, like, Helena kind of has to get out front to be able to use that. I was able to, because she was on the back row, that was one of the additional disadvantages for that team. Because she was on the back row, she never really had a chance to get a Reflect off, which would have been the biggest advantage that she could have had versus Shurecca. Again, Shurecca has some issues versus magic, so having her own skills reflected at her can do big damage when it's successful. But this is another AP Restore team, so we have a pretty good shot on them with Veritas of the Heavens applying his TMR. Dario and Shurecca are buffing in the back, and we managed to, with glinting armor in auto, rush in enough to take out Mont before he could literally do anything. This is the scene that you got to see earlier in the video. So, while I've said that Gilgamesh can destroy this team, it's pretty hard for him to do it alone. Not too hard, though, as you're seeing, but we definitely have the upper hand at this point. And we've pinned Gilgamesh down, so hopefully no one's going to come in range of him. He's also berserked, so he can't even get to us to attack. Poor guy. We hit him with the wombo combo and trapped him in place, unable to do anything. That's how you disarm that guy. Not that that's going to happen very often. That was really a kind of lucky situation. This is also a team that I've seen a lot that also has strong AP restore synergies that we can negate with Blade Stream. And it's been... My chances, like all of my AP denial teams, have done pretty well against this one. But Cypher is a good combination for those teams, especially versus some of my more healing-heavy teams that run those AP denial strategies. That being said, some of these units fall so easily and so effectively to Shurecca that even his help isn't enough. He also isn't quite as good versus magic, although he can resist it pretty well. So Dario and Shurecca here are both doing a little bit more than most would. We can also see that Dario is taking damage fairly well here. Unfortunately, there aren't any magic units on this team for his barrier to really apply to. Also, Sid, Veritas of the Heavens, getting an extreme far right start allowed him to bait Curse, which is very helpful, as he is definitely the unit on this team I would want to be cursed if anyone. We also do pretty well into all fire teams. Again, Dario can really protect us pretty effectively against magic teams. Even though Shurecca herself isn't as great versus magic, neither is Soul, so we have a pretty good matchup here in general. Also, you can see this is one of my favorite formations to run on most maps with most initial setups, is to put my slowest unit and hopefully my tank in the center. Sometimes this can be hard outside of initial placement, because you kind of want your tank in slot 1 to get the extra initial hate, and sometimes this can force you to put a tank in slot 2, which isn't bad, and usually that 1 hate isn't a big deal. It's even less what Shurecca just gained for that attack. So, it's not a huge deal, but it can be helpful to make sure that that initial hate is on your tank. So especially on stuff like this, I'll put the tank in 1 and then swap them to slot 2 using the initial placement system. Also, we got to see Summer Resnick's big heal, although it didn't keep Soul in the game for very long. He got shot down pretty easily by Shurecca, all the way from full health, which isn't as hard as it seems when you've used full life, because they're going to keep their chain. So any chain that we had been building up on them, they would maintain and allow us to do pretty heavy damage to them. Also, at this point, most characters have lost any initial benefits or things that were keeping them from taking more damage at the beginning of the fight. A lot of their buffs have been dispelled by being taken off the board, so they have a lot of problems. Also, you can see here, we all managed to get cursed, but it was too late for that to really matter for the opposing team. We had already put them in too big of a problem area. And that can be the issue with Curse. If you want to get it on multiple characters, you're probably keeping Sephiroth back so that he can wait for them to get in range before he tries to hit them with his big AoE skill. But at the same time, that can kind of backfire, because if he's doing this too late in the match and the people who are up front are already doing pretty poorly, as Ash and Mont will generally do against an all-win team, it can be too little too late sometimes. Okay, Dario baited the curse here. In some ways I should probably be trying to get Shurecca to bait the curse. That would be pretty cool, but I want her to get her buffs off, and one of the ways that, one of the strategies that was helping Veritas of the Heavens bait the curse was that he was using his own TMR and running forward initially. Because I did miss some healing on Dario here because of this, but we're already doing pretty great. Save Mont for last back there. Oh man, we did a lot of damage to him and berserked him. Dario can do some... Whoa. Did you see how much damage that counterattack hit for? Good grief. That's pretty ridiculous. Okay, here's another one. Another versus fire with Ash and Mont set up. So just kind of another AP auto restore team here that we're going to be nullifying a bit. The one downside to using the Veritas TMR the way I am here is that Veritas of the Heavens will no longer run in towards the center to get buffs applied to Dario. I could negate that since Dario already has single target buffs by giving it to him, but I do kind of want him to get his buffs off. That being said, I could do decently well without his auras since I am fighting mostly physical teams with this setup, so maybe I could afford for him to lose one of his buffs as long as I chose it effectively. That would keep them in the middle because it wouldn't really change his AI's movement priorities in the early game in the same way that it's causing Veritas of the Heavens to break out away from everybody else. Also, big deal here, we just berserked their healer, so that's going to be really bad for them. Mont's here dead in the middle of everybody. So he's going to be taking plenty of damage. Oh, just barely didn't get the courage, which allowed him to get his follow-up healing in, his threshold healing in. Just barely, though. A little bit more damage, a little bit more reincarnation could have definitely fixed that. And if I haven't said it so far, the Shurecca in this video is sitting at 10 reincarnations only. I think Dario is pretty high though, and Veritas of the Winds is fully reincarnated because that's pretty easy to do for him. Once the next Legendary Reliquaries comes out, I'm going to try to pick up both the Sky Ripper, his signature spear, although I do like the Dragon's Whisker on him, but I think maybe on this team he doesn't need to be as accurate, and that's one of the big helps from the Dragon's Whisker. So maybe he could afford to use the Sky Ripper, but also the Guardian's Crystal I've been hyping up for a while, and now is a good time to be getting ready for that. You're going to need 945 medals, though even more if some of these are Veritas of the Earth medals, because those are going to be counted at half value. So you're going to have to build up twice the medals for whatever contribution he's making. But this is definitely going to be a big one that is going to boost up the Veritas. I've already mentioned it in this video, like on this team, it might get Veritas of the Heavens closer to 20k HP, which is not to mention all the other huge boosts to his stats that he would get from that, you know, really boosting up his attack as well. But also how much of it boosts his luck, which would natively boost his accuracy. Like, there's just a lot of ways that this would build him up to be an indomitable character that would really build up this team. That's another video that I want to put out after the update, is kind of showing off how much stronger this team can become with that accessory. Because I really do, I don't want to understate this, but like, if you can get the +5 version of this quickly, I think you're gonna like skip ahead into the highest power tier of wotv at the moment, because these characters definitely have the abilities to be top tier units. It's really only their stats that are lacking, and this will more than solve that problem. Here's another example of Shurecca 2-tapping Mont for like 17k damage. Good grief. The retaliation was pretty good, though. He did manage to curse 2 of us. And that's already hurting Dario's ability to heal others. I guess he doesn't try to heal himself when he's cursed because he can't, but he has to heal someone, so he tries to heal someone else. It's kind of the vibe I'm getting from the way that the AI hits for this, it seems. Here comes a more modernized light team. This light team should be capable of guild limited right now. I think it's a 270 cost team, so this is another way to go for light that's a lot more physical than the mostly magically based option that I threw out earlier. Also, much more updated than my light team. I have skipped out on a couple of the newer light units in favor of just getting some of the more meta general units for my light account, so this is a more updated version of that hopefully has a little bit better of a time with Dario. Also, Cloud being on this team could help the general matchup against certain magical units on this team a little bit. As we saw earlier, though, Engelbert is going to be really one-tappable, even through Courage, for Shurecca because of her follow-up hit, and just terrible magic resistance on Engelbert's side, but also terrible speed because he's already got lapped by 2 members of my team from what I can, or at least 1 member of my team from what I can see. Shurecca's already lapped him. Nope, Dario will lap him as well. Very slow unit. And very bad at taking magic damage. But it looks like we aren't quite in range of him yet. In part because he's moving forward so fucking slow. Okay, so they've definitely got us in range to do some damage. We haven't been able to hit Cloud hard yet, so here comes the retaliation. Pretty big damage on Veritas of the Heavens. Dario actually dealt with that pretty well, though. Oh, but we have turned off Engelbert's AP, or he just is completely out at this point. Already done really good damage to him, even without using his magical weakness against him yet. Ooh, that was huge damage. Okay, so can Shurecca deal with this whole situation by herself? That's the question. We're in desperate times. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and not only did she do the expected really high damage to Engelbert, she also took Cloud down to Courage from nearly full health, which wasn't something that anybody else was really being able to do to him. Oof, okay, Cloud's gone now, and I don't think... Well, okay, Lucio wasn't going to be able to get into range, but we decided to move in on him, so I guess now he has range, but we have lapped him, so he's not going to get a chance to respond. So there's another victory. And while I have cut out losses in editing this, I've actually cut out more easy wins. So here I want to show you not only some of the teams that this team can easily beat through the guild mock battle system. You can already see Earth teams, full evasion. You can also see a variation on the Dark team on screen right now they was able to beat easily. But I'm also going to take this data as an opportunity to show you a lot of the teams that we lost against and a lot of ways to beat this team as well. Here's the Evasion Earth team that we were able to beat. As well as the Dark team. Looks like this one's definitely made for accuracy. We did okay versus this Ice Bait team. Nearly completed it, but A2 seemed to have survived pretty well. Ooh, the Fire and Water team beat us. Let's see. Okay, so this is a AP team with Sakura for points. AP team, low level though, with Shalza. I think Shalza could be pretty good for that team if they were at a higher level. It could have done better. Another Dark team. and did pretty well versus my defensive version of this team, but not quite beating it, interestingly enough. This is a bit of a mixed team, also a bait team. It did pretty well against that. Couldn't touch this team, though. This is what I was saying. I think Shalza could be good on a team like that. We've already seen that matchup earlier. And then there's a lot that I just didn't test against. So this is one of my first... I think this was a loss. Alright, well, we'll let it play out and see. I think the only win that I actually put in this video was the Earth Evasion win. And that is from much earlier in the video. So I think we're only going to be seeing teams that beat this now. And part of it is that I just haven't figured out kind of the initial placement very well for Guild Battle. I wanted to film this pretty early before I'd got my team figured out so that I wasn't giving away too much inside knowledge from limited Guild Battle. And Shurecca not getting up to the front effectively is certainly a problem. Especially with Veritas of the Heavens getting so far ahead too. That could be a bit of an issue. But also, often it's Dario that gets too far ahead. Interesting thing about this team is that Dario has some pretty long-range immobilize in his kit as well that also builds him hate. So that can be pretty powerful. As you can see, he's doing pretty well against Ashe and Mont, although the follow-up hit did do pretty decent damage. Now they're both immobilized though, as Shurecca has said, hey, I can immobilize people too. Both of them also said, hey, we have threshold heals, so how dare you. Getting us into the danger zone, but oh man, they still have courage. Jeez. Well, couldn't quite chew through that. We did manage to meet Brownwell, though. At the very least. One of the interesting things about Shurecca's kit is that with the damage increase on Farsplosion, it will encourage her sometimes to move back after attacking when people have encroached on her range. Or move back before attacking, rather. If she doesn't have to move back before her attack, if she's already kind of maximally back, she'll move forward afterwards, which isn't good. But in a lot of cases, Farsplosion is one of the only skills that I've seen in this game which actually encourages a long-range unit to maintain their range as high as possible. And that is really good and really helpful. I wish that that had triggered in that last fight and gotten her out of the way of damage, because with them immobilized, she could have picked them off from range. However, it did not, the cookie did not crumble that way. So that's pretty unfortunate for us. But we've managed to draw these guys over to the side, and this is a team that we came pretty close with. But also a team that is very much designed to bait a team much like mine. A2 did decent damage, but not nearly as high as I would have thought against an MR Dario. He's an interesting tank in that he has some resistance both to physical and magical, so he's a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. Definitely better on the magical side, especially considering his buffs, which he largely isn't using in this fight because they're pretty outdated. Also generally unhelpful against a lot of the things that I'm going up against. Ooh, wow. Farsplosion really messed up their Mont. Okay, so we've got them... Oh, wow. She really turned that one around. Did we get the immobilize off? Her sword looks green. But we just aren't getting quite out of her range. And there are units that even with that kind of Farsplosion backup, she won't quite get out of their range, especially units that have big AoE skills. So her range can be a little bit dangerous for her, in that it's not quite as long as other super long range units. It's definitely within that kind of mid-range non-gunner type damage, and there are units, especially with bigger AoEs, that can take advantage of that. This team did really well. I guess giving Sephiroth courage and re-raise is a pretty powerful combination. We'll see how that plays out. Also, these types of teams generally get a lot of regen on them, which can be a real problem if you can't crack through them fast enough. Yep, here it is. Okay, what can we do? What can we do? We can build up some hate, but not much damage. Of course, he was attacking an anti-magic unit, so that's part of why he had trouble there. But see, it wasn't even enough to keep damage on her, even without her healing. Okay, so we have pinned her back. That's going to help. Haven't done a lot of damage. The follow-up did pretty decent, though. Veritas following that up was pretty good, but she got her heal in. Sephiroth wasn't able to break through her HP barrier, but June was able to follow that up and do that herself. Double Dreer isn't doing a lot of damage to her. The follow-up did okay. Disruption Fang, she's just not doing as well against physical. Ooh, Counter Gale came very close to taking her out. That would have been a big difference in that. But, no. Didn't manage to take out any of them. In fact, 2 of them being 120s is actually pretty crazy, too. That's a good team. And they've definitely paid a lot of attention to getting their buff pattern set up better than I have. Frankly. So here's kind of another variation on that team, except it's going to be using Shurecca instead of June. As you can see, we're getting Courage onto Shurecca. Whole bunch of buffs there. Whole bunch more buffs there. Dario all there. Oh, Curse is going to hurt him. All out there by himself. We did get the Glinting armor cast off, so we're catching up with him. Ooh, okay, Veritas of the Wind, or Heavens, is not doing good enough damage to the Sephiroth yet. At least Heavens isn't taking huge damage from him. Shurecca, because of some of the range height, I think, issues here, can't get in range. But their Shurecca can. She's also, as we see, moving back to maximize her damage. Oh no, and now she has a threshold heal. Jesus. Okay, so we did manage to get through Sephiroth. Yay, we beat at least one unit, but Veritas of the Heavens didn't make it past Shurecca. Damn, Shells strong. She's a very powerful character in Limited. Like, this was definitely a meta that was meant for these 70 cost units to shine, and as we've seen in these last 2 fights, having this as your third on your team instead of an MR unit like Dario is a pretty big help. I'm not saying that all of the 3 UR teams, like Engelberg didn't do nearly as good a showing, but Shalza has definitely proved her, pound for pound, her ability to punch way above her weight in limited compositions like this. And she's definitely showing us why here. She's just been everything that her team has needed to stay in the game. So thank you so much for watching. I'm Jackie Fox. Remember to like and subscribe. Check the link in the description for more Jackie Fox content all over the internet, and hopefully soon to be on a bookshelf near you. Also, you can support the channel just by leaving a comment telling me what you think. But I'm going to end the video by showing you kind of what my stockpile of medals looks like. For Folka here, I've already got that staff, so everything I get for her is just going to be, you know, stuff that I can use into the future. I'm actually building this character, so I'm going to need to hold off on using his medals to build the equipment that's coming in a couple of days. Translations have told me it's called the Guardian's Crystal. But this is going to get me about halfway there. I've been building up coins for Veritas of the Flames. I'm not going to build him on this account. Also, I'm not building Veritas of the Frost, although I did go ahead and unlock Frost Lord. So that's going to provide me at least half of the medals that I need, and hopefully arena and stuff will make up the rest. Now, I did film this last week, so I hadn't got the extra 60 medals for being in the top 5k for both water and for ice. So I'm doing a bit better now, and I'm getting close. It might take maybe a week before I can Guardian's Crystal +5, but I should be pretty close. So, with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.